This doesn't look like I normally look. What did I do? Screw
You got
something
a little
up?
older. You got a little older.
So, you in the shower
look,
like you said you'd be?
No, it looks clear. The monitor's coming through clear.
Here's what I think about Windows.
Flip it to Linux.
Yeah. You see it?
Barely. What is that?
Linux Mint. It's kind of based on Ubuntu, but it's I think a lot better. But I hadn't tried Ubuntu in a long time. Yeah, hey, Noel. I think you're on mute.
Perfect. Morning, guys. Sorry.
Morning. You pronounce your name Noel, right? That's what I always say.
I do. Yeah. Yes.
I told Ray yesterday. I said, well, that's what we've been calling him. He's been
Yeah.
responding to.
I had to double check because there was a guy I knew in high school that same spelling, but he liked to be called Noel. So you never know. I guess that's a matter of preference.
My parents were French Canadian, and so I was named after an uncle who was born near Christmas. And I tried to switch it to Noel when I started working many years ago. And I thought, well, that'll be easier because people always used to ask me, well, why do you pronounce it that way? And then finally I gave up because then they'd say, is Lowell there? Is Joel there? It's like.
So you're saying your uncle was the first Noel?
He was, and then he changed. He kind of changed his name. Yeah, he changed his name he went by Chris because his birthday was the 22nd of December. So he thought, that was
that
more,
was related.
That was related or, more acceptable. And he lived his whole life in Canada. So what are you going to say?
Hey, boys.
Morning.
Yeah.
Thomas, your camera's on, but it's black. You got
yeah. I reinstalled the driver and well, for the life of me, I don't know.
I had a lot of people ask me, do you spell your name with a C or a K, Chris? So, and Thomas, we have no idea. We call him French Tom, so it's easier that way.
The guy at Chick-fil-A the other day asked me, he said, Jason, how do you spell that? he was a new guy and he had somebody training him looking over his shoulder, so he's nervous about every little thing, I think.
Maybe he was a tech person. He wanted to spell it JSON. You never know.
Yeah, I get that, Jason. Yeah,
Noel,
the girl that was with him training him said it really doesn't matter how you spell their name. It's just recognizable. Spell it phonetically. They're just calling their name out, right?
No, where are you located at?
Chicago. You must be someplace warm near Atlanta, Chris, or Birmingham.
Yep, in Atlanta. I'm actually sitting on a back deck listening to the birds.
Nice.
Yeah, it warmed up yesterday. We had a storm roll through Georgia night before last, and we were in the city. We sat at 60 from the middle of the night for early morning all day yesterday. Now we're at 55, so it feels like a touch of spring.
Yep, I had to turn my air conditioner back on.
Really?
Yep, the house got up to 72 yesterday, so I like it cold at night when I sleep, so we turn the air conditioner back on.
It gets humid too. We have to do it sometimes too. The humidity, is so bad here that just for a few minutes to be less humid.
Yep.
Well, we've got a few attendees watching us, and they're like, "Wait a minute, what did I dial in here to? These guys don't know they're live." Yes, we know we're live. Welcome to Liquidware Unplugged. We'll have this coffee talk and chat for the next few minutes before we get going, and you'll be subject to hear anything from birds chirping to the weather, and then we'll get more focused.
That's the plan anyway.
Yeah.
You never know where it's going to go.
And I'm giving up on my camera, guys. I don't know. Reinstall the driver, everything. You won't have the pleasure of seeing my beautiful face.
Haven't seen you in 2 years.
I miss you, man.
Did you
Yeah.
take the cover? You take the cover off of it, Thomas?
Thank you. Thank you for saying that
Are you sitting in a dark room?
Mic.
Maybe you're just sitting in a dark room. Turn on the light.
If I close my eyes, is the webcam black as well? If I can't see me, can you see me?
So as we're having this candid conversation here, waiting for the actual webinar to start, we started quarter past the hour when we actually start the presentation. So we'll have some of this in there. But the nature of the Unplugged session, if you haven't been to one of these before, is there's not slides for this, save for maybe one or two examples that we might pull up as a reference while we're talking. But one of the great parts about this is that you have the opportunity, the attendees have the opportunity to chime in. Send us your questions, send us your comments. If you want to be part of the conversation, send us a question and I'll ask if you want to be added to the conversation. We'll unmute you and you can kind of do that. So right now, especially in the early stage, maybe if you have an idea for Thomas on how to fix his webcam, send us your thoughts.
Really unplugged. Well, I took it too literally. I unplugged my webcam, so I thought that was the purpose of the webinar format.
Yep. Thomas, type in this command on your machine: format C:/
// all.
Yep, that'll fix it. That'll take care of it.
There you go.
Look at that.
See, that worked.
Turn it back off. Turn it back off.
What do those fake tech support calls say? Go to this website and click on "Let me take over your PC."
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to navigate this website.
All right, I need some lightning. It's a bit. Are you outside, Chris?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. Sitting on my back deck, looking at the backyard.
We're
in a pool that's 50 degrees. Actually, I can't even get in it. So, but it's pretty.
All right, it's 30 degrees, and we just get a couple inches of snow.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah,
you need to broadcast from outside. You need to broadcast from outside.
Yeah. Well, for sure, my laptop won't be overheating, for sure. Let me grab some lightning.
I can check the temperature with the Stratosphere. Hold on, I'll tell you what it's running right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, close down that website too. Your website you're looking at is not supposed to be there.
I have nothing to hide. I'm actually going to grab.
Let us run an agent on his machine.
LWL Cloud Demo, I think, is the name of my machine. I stop sharing and put some lightning on because it's kind of I'm kind of ghostly.
But that was a new COVID look. It's the new normal. Nobody has any sun.
We don't have enough Liquidware shirts with long sleeves, do we, Ray? Ray's got short sleeves in the Chicagoland area, and I made mine a winter shirt.
We've got a couple, but not a lot.
That's a nice jacket.
Yep.
Prominence of this logo. So,
Thomas, your
next up in my rotation.
Your camera looked good to me, Thomas.
Yeah. All done.
Also heard from an audience member that let me know it looked good.
Yes, I can see.
We do have a question
now.
Now
it doesn't like it.
Sean asked, who's in charge of the Super Bowl pool? I'm sorry, I don't think we're supposed to say that. Who's in charge of the big game pool at Liquidware and how much per square? I'll be honest, I haven't seen one this year. Have any of you?
Normally Chuck does that.
Yeah.
He hasn't put out anything though. But with all the people backing out, like Budweiser and a Pepsi and all of them, and Coca-Cola backed out of the Super Bowl. So the
really
market's gonna be kind of interesting this year. Yeah.
By the way, talking, what do we have in Florida? Oh, nobody. If Chris, you got to tell Mark Jones, you're welcome, coming from a New England guy to a Florida guy.
Yeah. Well, he's down with COVID.
It was
right now.
It was a 1 year thing, right? So we want him back. So
Yeah,
send Tom Brady back, please, whenever you can.
Yeah. We were hoping for a different outcome on that one.
Wait. Were you routing for Green Bay?
Yep.
And you live in Florida?
No, I live in Georgia.
Oh, no, you live in Georgia. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah, somebody other than Brady at the end of the day.
I don't blame you.
We have a comment here from someone that's saying they're not seeing any value in this presentation so far. They've got other things to do. Well, one thing I want to let you know is actually we don't start the webinar for another 5 minutes. So this is kind of pre-talk, the pre-show. Just kind of letting you know.
You're going to get so much value once we start. You just get a pen and paper ready, or dictation would be even better. Turn Siri on, because there's going to be too much to take notes for. We'll let it loose in 3 minutes.
It's going to be like sipping from a fire.
Talking about value, today's topic is ROI. So we've got some great presenters here. I'm Ray Swanson. I'm the Director of Marketing. I'm kind of one of the hosts and person facilitating today's conversation. We'll go around and we'll introduce everyone and kind of go from there. And then once we get started here, after we finish those introductions, we can go ahead and get started, and we'll start the discussion. And at any point in time, you've got a question or a comment for us, let us know. Put it in the question or the comment window, and we will do our best to get everyone's questions in there. And even if you want to ask your own questions and be part of the discussion, let us know, and we'll unmute you, and you can be a part of that discussion. So why don't we go ahead and pass it over to Jason Smith, who can introduce himself, and then we'll just go around the table that way.
We'll go around. I think that we show up in the order for cameras in the order which we joined. I think that's consistent across everyone.
No, I was on first. I was actually dialed in right before Ray.
Oh, well, we have exceptions to the rule.
Yep.
I'm Jason. I lead product marketing management over here at Liquidware, and fairly technical with that. Been with the company since 2009, the year we got started, and excited about today's topic. And the topic will be on ROI, realizing ROI with Liquidware solutions. And if you've been or seen Liquidware before, you may already have known me. So I'm more excited to introduce the rest of the panel. Noel Levasseur. We're happy to have Noel Levasseur with us. I'll introduce a little bit of him because I'm just that proud to have him on. He's been a CIO for very many years, and I'll let him tell you the name of the place where he worked. And he's also consulting with many companies because, as a CIO, you have to realize ROI with everything you do, and you're ultimately responsible for that. And for him to now be in a consulting position and consult with us to help our customers know the ROI they're getting out of our solutions, we're just pleased to be doing that. And you'll see some of the resources we've already developed in doing that today. Well, so without further ado, Noel, if you want to introduce yourself further. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jason. Yeah, Noel Levasseur here. I was CIO for 36 years of First American Bank, a privately held bank in the Chicago area that extended its reach to 3 different states, all the way down to Florida and north into Wisconsin. We had over 60 offices and about 750, close to 800 employees. And the transition to consulting has really been an easy one, because that's what a CIO is to their organization. They're like an internal consultant, and being a relatively small organization, being nimble is pretty important. So I'm excited to be here and share our perspective about ROI and accelerating time to value. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you. Chris Walker.
So my name is Chris Walker. I am a field SE based in Atlanta, Georgia. I specialize in Stratosphere and helping customers get value out of Stratosphere, either from diagnostics, application recovery, asset recovery from machines, stuff like that. So helping customers with the Stratosphere data and many different use cases, but basically here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Thomas Lahaussois. Maybe you can pronounce your last name one more time, just to make sure I didn't screw it up after this many years.
Or maybe I should. Lahaussois.
That was closer.
Lahaussois. So I'm a distant cousin from Noel. We have both French names, so but his French is a lot better than mine. So Thomas,
I wish.
Thomas or French Tom. I'm part of the Alliance team, technical director for Alliance, so nothing to do with ROI. But on the side, I basically like to crunch numbers. So I got enrolled and invited by Noel and Jason, and in building a little bit of the calculation behind how we come up with those ROI numbers. So that's what I'll be presenting today. I have a 64 slide deck that I had to throw away just because of what Ray said earlier.
Yeah.
So there won't be any deck except for an example.
Yeah, we'll do some screen sharing.
I
Thanks.
stayed up late last night building my PowerPoint deck, Ray, so I'm
You
not
too.
happy I don't get to use it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
That's the one
Everyone,
thing I
you're
love
welcome.
about the unplugged format. Where's your slides? Is no longer a deadline for Ray to have to bug us to get the slides.
Yeah. And no pictures, just text, wall of text. 64 slide with just bullet points. That's all.
All right. So one of the most interesting things I find in any presentation we ever do with Liquidware and in the industry is that prospects, customers, and the community really want to hear, how did you do this for a customer? So we're going to jump like straight to that, because Noel was also a customer with Liquidware for very many years with Stratosphere. So we've got a whole suite, to remind everyone, for adaptive workspace management. What's adaptive workspace management mean? It means everything for the user environment, your applications, and your user experience. You can know that, and it will follow you from one desktop to the next, and it will help with migrations, making them seamless. It'll help keep your user productivity maximized. It will help you with your ongoing management of your entire Windows desktop enterprise, not just your Citrix desktops or your VMware desktops or your physical desktops, but adapts at every single login, and then know that user experience between the two. Well, Noel and the company he worked for was a customer of Stratosphere UX, user experience, knowing that user experience. So without further ado, I'd like Noel just to volunteer how they used it, and maybe touch on some of the return on investment that you were able to see there at First American.
You know, at First American, we my boss, who used to sit next to me, who was the chairman, he finally got his own office. He used to always preach, you know, what's the ROI? And for many, many years, we used to identify the payback with a discounted net present value from the stream of payments and what the economic value that was returned. And it had to pay for itself in 36 months. And as time marched on, it got to be more challenging because implementations sometimes wouldn't take a few weeks. They'd take months. Sometimes they'd even extend beyond a year. And what's really interesting about our experience with Stratosphere was that it really accelerated the time to value. And by that, I mean that in a very, very short period of time, we got our payback. And it was incremental with every small amount that we invested in terms of our time for what was returned. And so to Jason's point, we had embraced, you know, we were a big Citrix shop for years and years, and we were making a move, and we had migrated our desktops to Nutanix and hyper-converged, and great technology, you know, really exciting how fast we could obviously do things. And we were trying to migrate to Office 365, and we had migrated everything, but we were waiting for Microsoft Teams to be deployable. And the original bogey for what resources we'd need were obviously released by Microsoft, but in less than 12 months, they changed and changed again and changed again. And so we found ourselves testing Teams, and it was brutal. And everywhere we looked, everybody was having some of the same issues. And so I convinced, I said, you know, we gotta really turn up Stratosphere, because we really need the visibility, the transparency into what's happening. And when we did that, we found that the real experience and the real requirements were very different because everyone's environment's different. And so what we found was we had to step back and we had to add additional resources from Nutanix. If we hadn't done that, we would have fallen on our face. And as it turned out, we couldn't have predicted that COVID was going to happen. You know, we had probably a lot of Liquidware clients and other customers that have just enormous work from home initiatives. And that's what happened to First American. Literally, in a matter of a few days, 75% of the employees need to work from home. And it was just that quick, and we didn't miss a beat, thankfully, because Stratosphere allowed us to identify that we had really 3 different size resource users or consumers. We had the power users that were big into BI. We had the middle of the road that supported a lot of complex applications. And then we had a lot of transaction task-oriented workers that were really lighter duty. And if we would have sized it for the upper end, we would have overspent to the tune of 200 or 300%, and we would never have gotten the ROI. And of course, when you're locked into a subscription with Nutanix, you know, you're along for the ride. You hope you're going to grow into that. And so instead, we were able to really size 3 different sets of shoes, so to speak, for each of our users, each of those groups, and deploy them. And then what we found with Stratosphere was that, you know, this environment is very mobile. So their managers would very fluidly assign additional responsibilities. So someone that was in the mid-tier might move into a power user role for a month or 2. It was really important to be able to identify that had taken place in advance, as opposed to by getting a call in support and saying, I'm running too slow, I don't know what's happening, you know, my logins are horrible. And so this really allowed us to get our arms around not only where we needed to be,
Yeah.
but
so how many users did you added users for work from home right away?
well, we switched. If we have 750 employees, 75% of them immediately went to work from home.
And that's why we talk about burst scale. That's the
Yeah.
burst scale your VDI environment on the. So how long did it take you guys to get those people productive again?
Literally, because we had sized and validated the Nutanix configuration and added more resources, we were poised and ready. And so when COVID hit, literally, it took 3 days.
That's great. That's great. Did you have to add Citrix licenses to do it, or were you already covered?
No, we were already covered. Same number of licenses, same number of desktops. It was just a matter of where they would connect from. The only thing we had to add was, when one is considering, you know, elastic resources, we had to add some additional internet capacity. But luckily, with our providers, you know, we had additional burstable capacity that we could easily add on demand because we were only using a fraction of what our fiber total allocation was. So
we've got a question that just came in. Someone asked, how did you properly size the environment in advance, and what tools did you use?
Good question, Ray. Well, we sized the environment because we were running on Nutanix to begin with, and what we were trying to do was then add Microsoft Teams to that. And so we took a sample of about 50 of our users that represented really the cross section, that, you know, the power users, the mid-tier, the heads down transaction workers, and we monitored their use, and then we added Microsoft Teams to this very small subset of users, and we then recalibrated, reanalyzed what the resource requirements were for CPU, for RAM, and you know, the user experience score was really important because it allowed us to really understand what they were feeling, you know, users articulate their pain in different ways. You know, they may say that, you know, it's slow today, but they can't really say, what is it, one application or is it many? And so this allowed us to really drill into the application that they were experiencing, that they used the most, and that was running slower than it had to, than it had before when we had introduced Teams.
Did you ever do a, so you had basically cutting over many more to the Citrix environment, so work from home during COVID. Did you ever?
So what we did was we actually then took that data, we increased the resources for each of those 3 different size of users, and we kept tweaking it till we saw that their login performance was acceptable, their daily run performance, their logout performance. So we really looked at, you know, their total experience for the day, and we focused on what that work day was. We didn't focus so much on what it was 24 hours, because we knew that they were coming into work at 8 a.m. and they were probably leaving by 5 or 6 or logging off. And that's really where we had to focus. They had to be ready to work. They had to be able to serve customers.
Yeah. So you didn't have any really user downtime.
We had
because
none.
of your planning, and that wasn't you know, that wasn't so much because of strategy, or partly, but you were able to cut users over right away. And that's another thing, and that's one thing we look at with our customers, is how much user downtime are you going to experience if you don't have the right solutions to measure this, to plan this, to cut them over, to have the experience follow the user and things like that. We have a white paper that'll be available shortly, and one of our customers valued on average their employees in the thousands. They valued them at $80 per hour, and then they estimated their downtime during the year for those users could have been as much as 20 hours of downtime, given cutting over to a new platform, for OS changes, unforeseen changes like you're talking about and others. It really adds up. But you guys had a really good plan where user downtime was not in the equation, but it is for many, or you took it out of the equation where it didn't impact you. But many organizations don't really think about that part of the impact in the business continuity. I've said this on the other webinar we did on a related subject a couple of weeks ago. We got calls from Citrix customers and others that were looking to scale up into burst scale and had not planned as well, and they literally sent people home on a Friday, and then they were twiddling their thumbs or doing whatever, or taking vacation for a week or two, and that's significant downtime. That was not, and now a lot of organizations have right-sized things and they have a better plan in order, but we also made predictions that this year is the year that most organizations will revisit this to make sure it doesn't happen again and that you can rapidly adapt. Chris had something to say or add?
I got a question. Noel, I've talked to a lot of my customers. You know, they've sent 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 people home. And some of them are telling me that, look, 50% of them are never going to come back to the office. What's been your experience with your company and other CTOs that you've talked to? Where's that number? I mean, the reality of, you know, they've figured out with Stratosphere data that, hey, these people are being sometimes more productive at their house because they've got more flexible hours. Because I can actually see productivity information. You know, they're not working 8 to 5. And they're actually using that data to say, hey, look, you're such a good worker, you can stay home. But other people that aren't, they're saying you need to come back in the office.
You know, I think what we're seeing is that in the case of the bank, you know, they still had retail customers. They had customers that would come do a drive up. Maybe they couldn't have lobby meetings because of COVID restrictions and risk management, but they still needed to be there so that, you know, normal transactions could take place. Or at least the new normal. And to your point, while we used to call it, you know, work from home, WFH, I think what we're going to see now is we're going to see more need for WFA, work from anywhere, because ultimately folks want that flexibility if obviously their jobs can be done anywhere and they can be done remotely. So that means, you know, that might be in a coffee shop when that is returned to normal. It might be when they're in an airport waiting for a flight or what have you. Or it could be that they're working at home. The reality is everyone has requirements for mobile workforce. I think COVID has stretched that now, and we're going to see much more of that. And to your point, Chris, there'll be some workers that will be measured and that will be required to be more part of a pool. As you know, it's sometimes difficult with newer employees to build camaraderie and build teamwork and to have a support system around them. So I think there's going to be a balancing act, and so we'll learn more. But
did y'all work through an ROI document before? I mean, you had Stratosphere data for the sizing. You knew what you needed. Did y'all work through an ROI document, like, you know, how much is our downtime? Did y'all go through those exercises?
We looked at it really post after the fact. We looked at we basically knew that if we were wrong, and when I say wrong, you know, we tested some of these users on teams, a small number of them, and we were getting very dismal results. And we kept going back to our reference material that Microsoft had been producing, and nothing against Microsoft, but I think sizing to published requirements is becoming passé, because everyone's environment is so dramatically different.
Yep.
And you look at Microsoft Teams for a minute, you know, these guys in 2017, they had 50,000 organizations on Teams. In 2018, they had 4 times that, 200,000 organizations. And by 2019, they had 500,000 organizations. So how, and as they're rapidly changing the feature set, how are they really able to adequately convey what the requirements are? They doubled, you know, and everybody struggled with it. So it was really important to distill what the truth is for each user's environment and be able to look across representatively. And the toughest thing in this business has been getting actionable empirical data to make a decision. And so Stratosphere provided that pane of glass, that visibility that we needed.
Yeah, you can diagnose. Teams has been a big challenge with a lot of organizations just in the last couple of years. And when they deployed it, and they told us at Microsoft Ignite, said, yeah, 3 months, we plan to really take on the entire world with Teams. And they did, but the rollout was quite impressive. And then the resource intensiveness of it was, no one could have predicted it was going to impact, that wasn't really in tune to this part of the industry. And Stratosphere can help you know that and know anytime that you're adding things. So maybe it's a VoIP solution that you've added in addition to that, that integrates with your phone system, and all of a sudden things start going haywire. We can help you right size with that. I want to touch on the user productivity angle that we talked about just briefly, because Thomas has a report that we shared early on during the pandemic, because so many users were going to work from home, but a lot of our customers started to ask, do you have a report without getting too intrusive for us to know if our users are being productive? And Thomas, can you share that report, your screen, and let us take a look at that?
Yeah. I'm actually looking for the share screen button.
Sharing. It's on
here we go. Thank you.
Get it now.
You're right. I didn't have access to it. That's so mean.
Ask Alexa. Ask Alexa. She'll do it for you.
That's going to be Ray's new nickname. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
You should be seeing ourselves. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, and I realize we're kind of sidetracking from the ROI, but I think it's still related. This was something we built, I think it was back in March and April, when it became apparent that, as Noel mentioned, a lot of companies suddenly found themselves with users at home and they didn't have necessarily a management tool. So we built a custom dashboard that you can see here, and the main idea was not necessarily to look into each minute and the hour and CPU and memory and complicated metrics. This was designed to be more at the mid-management or executive level a bird's eye view of the health of their remote workers. One of the components was the ability to track activity level. Now, the idea behind it and the way it was consumed by customers, or at least requested and received, was not specifically to track, are you doing your job? That wasn't the Big Brother 1984 purpose behind it. The idea was to really get a pulse on your user population. That's why you don't necessarily see username and individual users and et cetera, et cetera. The whole idea is to get a pulse on how your company is being efficient and productive. So activity and productivity was one of the components. Now, this is also something I'm going to circle right back into the ROI, that it's also something we look at as one of the potential benefits of, or one of the ROI of using tools like Stratosphere to improve user productivity and the ability to really understand what impact that productivity and how you can keep it up. I'm wondering, Jason, I know you're the master of ceremony. Is that a good segue to dive into?
Yeah, it is. Do you have one more screen on this? Didn't you have apps in use so we can actually get so you can see business line apps in use? I didn't know if that was at your fingertips or not.
Not on that one. No,
yeah.
Not on that one. This one get more details on the daily, but
okay. So we do have similar reports that can show you line of business apps in use, and that'll give you a good handle on things as well. And you can see the hours at which they're active. You can drill down to a certain user. You can look at a certain group, and you can start to measure user productivity that way. And it is tied back to ROI, as Thomas said. But yes, transitioning over to where we wanted to make sure we covered is that we've developed an ROI calculator, as we mentioned earlier. Given our years of expertise in the industry and with Noel's assistance, helping validate and then also tweak it. So we have, in all honesty, we have two versions of this. We have the one that the majority of organizations would probably benefit from right away. And then we've got another one, just so our audience members knows, that can go so far and much deeper. And if you really want to know the ROI, we can double click down with that. But we're going to show you the one that's on our website, and we'll show you the process. So when a customer comes to us and budgets have been scrutinized, we have seen this because we had many organizations that were looking for us to help with our suite of solutions, but they have to validate, to Noel's point, before you buy now, almost as a rule, because of the situation of the way that the lockdown happened last year and the questions that arose about business continuity and what's your revenue going to look like at the end of the year. Everything has to pay for itself through an ROI, and especially with these bigger projects. So we really saw in March that customers were asking us for more of this information, and now we have on our website ones that will look at the major buckets where we can save your organization a lot of money. And if you look at this calculator that Thomas is going to walk you through here, you'll start to get a view of that. And we would encourage, if you've been asked that question by your management, how is Liquidware helping us save money, or are we getting our return on investment with the solutions? We would encourage you to go through this process. Thomas?
Thank you, Jason. So I'll take you quickly through the process. So if you're interested, if you're curious, if you want to know more specifically around ROI and what we can bring to the table, this is what you would do. You just go to our website, liquidware.com, and under company, we have an ROI section. You'll find already a lot of good information on how we position ourselves and where you can expect ROI. But down below at the bottom of the page, you'll find a section to actually get your custom ROI estimates. Now, if you click on that, I'm going to skip through it. What you're going to get is access to a survey. So the starting point is us getting information about you guys or your environment. And the survey is not too long. It's under 15 questions. And there's really 3 big sections. The first one is to know about yourself. So we won't ask you for too many details, but we'll ask you for your email address and name of the company so we can actually place you somewhere. Then we'll ask you general information about your environment. Again, not too specific. And finally, we'll go into the project. So we realize that ROI are not typically, in general, in absolute. So they're typically tied to specific initiatives or projects, and that's what we'll focus the most on. You don't need to have all the answers perfect. You can guess. It's absolutely fine. I don't know any customers, for example, that knows how many applications are deployed in their environment. Take a wild guess. That's perfectly fine. Just be aware that a number of the answers or the result coming from that will be based on that answer. So it's perfectly fine to guess. And that should took you about, I'm guessing, 5-10 minutes to follow. That's the extent. I think that's 14 or 15 questions. Once we receive that information, so it's directly fed into us and somehow will make its way to me, we basically compile the information and we spit out a report. I won't take you through all of it because I still remember Ray's comment about no text, so I'm going to be very careful. But I'm going to show you a couple of sections, and hopefully they'll illustrate how we save money and how we contribute to ROI around end using computing. So quick recap of your answers. Another things I wanted to brought up, and that's going to be a theme throughout the exercise, or if you go through that, is transparency. We're basing some of the answers or calculation based on new answers, and the other side is assumptions. So we have a number of data points that we have to assume. Now, those assumptions are we didn't come up with them out of a thin air. They're either based on our own experience. So we've conducted surveys in our environments. It's not our first rodeo. We've been doing that for over 9 years now, I believe. We've seen through strategy over 6 million desktop. So we've seen things. So some of the information you'll see here, or assumptions, are based on our own experience. The other is plain market research and industry standard. But again, we make sure everything's in the open. So if there is any assumption that you don't agree with, or as Jason mentioned, you want to go deeper and have a more fine-tuned ROI, that's perfectly a valid option.
So they get through the questionnaire. Yep. I'm recapping things you said on that.
Yep,
they get through the questionnaire on our website. We say thank you. We get it on our end. We make sure that the calculator appeared correct, but we'd like to schedule just a little bit of time with you to go over it, and we'll share our findings when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Typically, it'll take us, 24 hours to get the numbers. We typically review the data to make sure we haven't missed anything or there's anything weird. And typically, we schedule a call with you we send you the information and go over it together.
Yep. Chris?
So kind of a question for Noel. I'm an engineer. I like hard ROI dollars. You know, I do this, I get this back. I hear a lot of times in these ROI documents about soft dollars. From a CIO perspective or the executive management, is what kind of explain, you said something to me the other day that made a lot of sense, you know, how they're kind of the same, but a lot of our audience doesn't understand the difference between hard ROI and soft ROI dollars. What in your mind, how does that work out? Uh-oh.
I think you're still on mute, Noel.
Yeah, you're on mute. Ray, can you unmute him on the WebEx or on the Cisco?
Perfect. Thanks so much. I don't know why it wasn't unmuting. You know, it's all about the economic benefit, Chris, that results from the activity. So in the case of whether it's a soft dollar or a hard dollar, it's the economic benefit and the opportunity that it creates. So, for example, if someone's focused on something as simple as just improving login time, that means you're going to return productive time to users. So let's say you got just 1,000 employee census, or it could be, you know, 10 times that number, but we'll just take 1,000 for the heck of it. If we can reduce their login time by 30 seconds, let's say that represents a 16% reduction. That's an economic benefit return to that 1,000 employees of $156,000.
Wow. Yeah.
That's 150+% ROI. That's just in the login.
Yeah.
You know, and that translates to other events. Go ahead.
I'd mentioned that we oftentimes, and we do in the I believe, Thomas, in the report, don't we look at the findings in terms of capital expenditures and operating expenditures, CapEx versus OpEx, and that's about what Chris is talking about there. Is it capital expenditures? We look at maybe hardware cost, and we also look at operating expenditures, and that is the time that the user may be down or impacted, and that's that maybe $80 per hour across your entire company, and it really starts to add up in that area. I want to say we look at both. I want to communicate that we look at both in these calculators, and oftentimes, even if you discount OpEx, we're still adding enough ROI on CapEx, capital expenditure savings of machine updates and software licenses that you spend, to make the ROI usually very much worth it. We continue to be surprised when we walk through these scenarios with customers and they agree with us. So these are not numbers that we just get back to you. And that's the other reason why we want to go over them with you, because there's a lot to see behind the ink and the letters and the numbers. And we ask, do you agree that this is saving your company that much money? And oftentimes, honestly, it's we are in touch with someone in the management that needs to present these types of figures to a C-level exec like Noel held for so many years. So we want to make sure they're comfortable with the numbers too. We make sure that they are very much in line and legitimate for your organization. So when you engage with us in an ROI request, I want you to know that this is not just a bunch of numbers we're going to throw at you like you see from the industry a lot of times, and that you have to sell internally, because that's not even going to happen. If you don't have faith in the numbers that we show you, you're not going to have faith in sharing them with your advisors or your peers and showing them, look, we really are saving this much money. And every time we've gone through this exercise, dozens of times, we continue to be surprised, because oftentimes if you discount half of what we say, maybe for OpEx, and only look at CapEx, oftentimes you're still usually saving for enterprises in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in the first year alone. To Thomas's point, we're looking at it over several years. I know we're looking at $500,000 in this study in front of us, but many times.
Yeah, that's. I think you brought up on a very important point, Jason. And the first one was transparency. We basically looked at the I would say the typical used car salesman approach and did exactly the opposite every steps. So we want to be very transparent so that not only to make sure we have numbers that we can rely on, but also we encourage our customers when we go through the presentation and share the numbers to challenge the numbers. Jason mentioned the surprise, and that's a big one too, because that's probably not something we've done enough in the past with our own customers. But when we started to dig in and look into the ROI, this was born of a number of meeting with customers where on the customer request, we're like, oh, okay, we'll take a look. And Noel was actually part of the process with Jason. And that's when we realized the numbers were so big and direct proven numbers. Then we thought, hey, maybe we should put that out. And actually, this is an actually really great benefits for our products. Maybe we should tell the others and the rest of the world. The other side too is as Jason mentioned, is reliability and openness or honesty about the numbers is a big one as well. And I'll take you through a couple of examples, but one thing I wanted to mention earlier is, in some cases, there are some potential savings tied to a specific use case or scenario that we ignored on purpose because they didn't have a, let's call it a 80% chance of happening. So anything that we didn't feel completely comfortable with, we just ignore. So to say that, I'm not going to go as far as to say that initial numbers just based on that 15 question assumptions and our own assumption is going to be understated 100% of the time. It's going to go too far. But yeah, there's good chances of that. So I'll take you through 2 or 3 examples. First one to say, this is obviously the summary. As you can see, this is not a deep dive detail, typical financial ROI spreadsheet. And as Jason mentioned, we have a version of that. We wanted to focus on providing numbers, knowing that some customers will have different ways of consuming those numbers or presenting an ROI case studies internally. So we focus more on providing the numbers, which basically are savings. We basically look at investment minus savings. They are in those savings. There are soft cost and a hard cost. There's cost. It's mostly cost avoidance. We looked at it over 5 years. There's things, accounting or financial concept that are completely missing on purposes. We wanted to keep it very simple. For example, if you look at the ROI breakdown over 5 years, I should be discounting year $2 based on pure growth and interest rates. I don't. I just look at absolute numbers. But again, just looking at raw numbers, provide numbers so you can take them and apply it however you see fit. Now, looking year one, this is where it gets interesting in my book, because we're starting to talk about how do we contribute to an ROI story. So look on the right side or the savings categories. This is all the categories where we're touching on. You can see the nature of the savings, or how do we contribute together with the application or or Liquidware solution that's associated with it. Troubleshooting, right sizing, software licensing, extended life, migration, application lifecycle, and software replacement. They go from, I'll take 2 examples to compare them. Troubleshooting is fairly complex to estimate because we don't know what type of problems you have. And it's going to be mostly, no, it's actually going to be entirely soft cost. It's cost avoidance from loss of productivity and time spent by your IT help desk to troubleshoot a problem. The absolute opposite of that is software licensing, 3rd row down, where we look at hard costs. Those are support renewal that you were about to pay, but you didn't need to pay. So we look at actual dollar and cents that you're going to reduce for your next invoice within the next 12 months, whenever it comes up. So very different, but they're all part of it.
Hey, Thomas.
Yep, go ahead, Chris.
For this particular scenario that you're doing here, how many user environment was this?
I think it was around 2,000 or 3,000. To be honest, to do that presentation, I stole, quote unquote, stole from different presentations that I put together. So okay. I don't know if they jive all together, but I think, let me go back, 3,000 users.
Yeah, because I've done this with some of my customers, and even just software licensing was $250,000 they recovered.
Oh yeah, I'm not surprised.
I mean, so I just wondered how big an environment this was.
Yeah, and software licensing is a good one. This is where assumption can play a big role, because we know by experience, we know the percentage of, if we look at software installed versus used, we can come up with a fairly good estimate of what we'll find, because again, we've done that probably 12,000 times in different assessments. So that's something we see day in, day out for the past 7, 8, 9 years. We know what we don't know, but we're pretty sure what we'll find. The one that's more difficult to estimate is, right, so I found X number of applications that are installed but not used. How do we determine which one you pay a license for versus the one you don't? If we find that you have Notepad installed in your desktop but you're not using it, it doesn't equal savings. So we have to make a guess, and we took like a lowball approach. But like Chris mentioned, sometimes it's way bigger than that. Go ahead, Chris.
Like the extending the life cycle. I was at a bank a couple of years ago. We just introduced Optimizer. It's a pretty good sized bank here in the Southeast. And I said, if I can give you another 18 months on those teller machines, he said, you just saved me $1.2 million. He had the number right on the freaking top of his head, because I've just extended his life cycle. So, but that's a very large environment too. So your mileage will vary. But so it's good that you've got, I see these numbers, and I presented these a couple of times to my customers too. But yeah, I don't know, Noel, would that be considered a hard cost for extending the life of equipment, or is that a soft cost?
Capital expenditures, right?
It's really, it's changing your capital budgeting, your capital expenditure life. If you're talking about, instead of, think about most assumptions around capital life has nothing to do with what the real life is. Think about, for a second, most people assign a 3-year life to their desktops. And is that because it only really lasts 3 years? I think they say there's about 10 or 11 different reasons that folks decide that they have to replace it. One of them is the existing OS is no longer supported. Well, that's pretty easy. It's factual. Security updates are no longer available. That's factual. Security risks can't be updated. That's factual. But then you get into the computer's starting to slow down. That's what the help desk reports. Or the computer's too slow to boot. Or the fans are getting noisy. This sounds crazy, but this is like, it was numerous surveys done. Another one is the applications take a long time to load and run. A number of these, most of them are symptoms without any root cause.
I'm bringing some of that up on the screen, Noel, because this is, so we've got a white paper that'll be out within days, and you're looking at the almost final draft of it. And Noel helped us come up with this list, and it's here on this page. Some of the reasons why you would be replacing this, and I'm intentionally teasing you because I want the community to know about this white paper coming out soon. Different reasons why you might think to replace a machine.
But what's important that you mentioned, though, is that we all want to make decisions based on factual data. We don't want it based on innuendo or feeling. And with Stratosphere UX, you can now finally get empirical, actionable data to make decisions. You can, for example, all of a sudden say, you know what, 3 years isn't appropriate for our entire user base. We may have one section of users, their requirements really haven't outconsumed their resources. And so we don't need to replace them as frequently. And it's only when we're focusing on those that are driven by security or driven by an obsolete operating system that we really can't maybe mitigate that risk as easily. So,
great. What level of person would be able to read this? So like, I'm talking to one of my customers about Stratosphere. He's an engineer. He's interested in the diagnostic data. I probably need to get this higher in the organization to something that they can actually understand that financial dollars, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we targeted, when we wrote the white paper, for frontline administrators, middle management, and C-level. And the sweet spot, of course, is going to be right in the middle for management to be able to understand it. But it can be easily understood and used for any of those purposes. With the limited time we have available to wrap up, I wanted to share this one screen here. This was an ROI study that we did for an aviation manufacturer, several thousand users. And this gives you an idea of the final reports that we can get and where we can drill down and do a little deeper customization for your organization. In this case, we were able to show product by product within our suite where you're saving money. And in this case, and I don't mean to pick on any other software vendors, but we do show this particular customer, and they're all unique. You're all unique. So the calculator we have online will work for the majority of organizations, and we can go a little deeper. This particular customer, for example, was using Centrify to do some things that Profile Unity can do, and it was privilege elevation in that area. Look at the number we saved in license cost of that alone. That's $2.5, almost $6 million in that area. Automating
that real number. Yeah, yep. That's a real number. Yeah,
that was the real number. Yeah. Automating their migrations. They had a product called 1E in license cost alone, because they were going to use Profile Unity to make a profile stick and do a lot of things. 1E could easily come out of the environment and not be renewed. Not picking on them per se, but you can get rid of a lot of tools, and because our suite does so many things, $400,000 in that, and so forth. You start to see these things faster than I can read them, right? User downtime, because we make migration seamless. So the next point, $1.5 million almost. Automate the migrations in man hours, and that's the admin hours saved. And you see where we're breaking it out with OpEx versus CapEx, those hard costs of capital expenditures versus operating expenditures, which are the softer costs. And even if you were to discount half of those, we still, and keep in mind, we went over these numbers with their staff internally. And in some cases, Thomas is my witness and Chris is my witness, we undershot the numbers, and then we had to refigure the math to get to this final calculation. So the cost that it was going to cost them to add our bundle and our maintenance was inconsequential compared to the $6.7 million in first year alone. And when you aggregate this over for years 2 and 3, we can show that data too. It's quite impressive. And this is not our data. We're using the data and the calculations of the prospect in this case. And this was the one that valued their man hours and their employees at $80 per hour, for example. And we came up with this. So as you see, this is not the used car salesman approach to ROI. This is an investigative process we can take you through. We'd love for you to engage right there on the website to be able to do that. Ray, I'm finished sharing. If you can disable my sharing and take us back to some of the slides you probably want to take us back to. But I'd like to ask the panel for any final thoughts for overall ROI savings. Any point you want to quickly cover that we might have only touched upon, you want to make sure we iterate?
The application install versus use report in Stratosphere, being here for almost 10 years, is the #1 report used. It is instant, hey, I've got 10,000 copies of VisView out there and only 10 people use it.
Yeah, you literally see applications installed, this long list, application used in 30 days. And you're like, wait a minute, we're paying for all these. Yeah, that's the one. Oh, on that alone, we usually say, and they say, oh, okay. If you're right on that point alone,
we're done. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, great point, Chris. I'd never seen in 4 decades of my IT experience a suite that provided value so quickly, literally. Whether it's recapturing software license, whether it's we started talking about work from home, and so everybody has more than one deployment realm that they need to support, and being able to, from a single pane of glass, be able to look at what your user experience is, what their performance, and manage everything, whether it's software licenses, whether it's image management. It usually means more work, and instead you can approach this from the same pane of glass, support from the same one. It's slick, no doubt about it.
My last thought is going to be weird, but I would encourage everybody on the phone that's on the webinar today that's interested to keep challenging us. We've yet to run into one scenarios where the ROI is negative or zero. I think there's probably one out there, and I won't be happy until I find it. So because I think it's counterintuitive, but to find a customer where we have no value to bring, or there is the cost of the product is more than the savings, there's probably one out there. And until I think finding it will validate our approach, as weird as it sounds. So don't forget to, if you're interested, if you want to see what categories, how we can save money, approach it with a critical mind, and don't hesitate to challenge us. We won't take it personally. Well, maybe Chris would, but not me.
I was going to volunteer my lawn maintenance guy, let him run through your ROI calculator and see what it comes up with. Yeah.
Find something.
Yep.
Thank you.
Find something. Yeah.
Ray Swanson, final thoughts?
Excellent. Yeah, I don't see any other questions or comments from the group. There were 1 or 2 questions that we actually answered through our examples and whatnot, so that was great. As Jason mentioned with the ROI white paper, that is actually going to be published later today. So as attendees to this event, watch your inbox for a follow-up email from us, and we'll send you the first link for that white paper, and you'll get exclusive first rights to that white paper. I did see another question just pop in just now. Todd asked, is this recorded and viewable later? Yes, we did record the session. We will post it live, and we will post it on our community site, which is community.liquidware.com. If you haven't been on that site, it's a great place to continue on the conversations that we have here. It's filled with experts and people from our community that join together, ask questions, share thoughts. It's a great place to do that. So check that out if you haven't already. But we'll be posting that probably within a day or so up on the community site. Just as soon as we can get it recorded and posted onto our servers, we'll get it up there. So that being said, thank you everyone who joined us today, and thanks to all of our panelists and presenters. If you have any other questions, feel free to direct them to us at unplugged@liquidware.com. We'll make sure we get you answers to your questions from our panelists, or bring them over to the community, community.liquidware.com. So thank you all.
Thank you all. Take care.
Take care.
Stay
Bye-bye.
safe. Bye.
Thank you.